Happy Monday, happy training camp eve, and welcome to another episode of Hornets Daily, your one-stop shop for all things Charlotte Hornets. As always, represented by the good people over at FanArc, and I'm your host, Vance Ballard, but you already know you can call me VB. I want to thank everybody for joining us out there, watching along with us today. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, leave a like and a comment down in the comment section. As the regular season gets closer, there will be more to talk about down in the comments section. Want to see what you guys think about the show at that point. Want to see what you guys think about what's going on with the Hornets as well as we continue to interact and grow and build this Hornets Daily family here on the program. Now, we've got a full show for today. As I mentioned, it's training camp eve. We're going to talk a little bit about the excitement going into this training camp for the Hornets, as well as a media day that is taking place today. We've got some burning questions that need to be answered. We'll talk a little bit about what those questions may be, and then, of course, we'll know tomorrow if they got answered. And is Trey Mann going to play a bigger role than expected this year and going forward with the Hornets? We'll talk a little bit about the expectations for the Hornets' backup point guard, and then we'll wrap the program up today talking a little bit more about David Thorpe's comments on LaMelo Ball. We talked about him last week. I think it was Friday. We talked about those on the show, but they've been kind of gnawing at me, eating at me all weekend, so we'll talk a little bit more about those to wrap the program up today. Now, you know, here on Hornets Daily, I don't beat around the bush, like to dive headfirst right into the program, and that's exactly what we're going to do here again today. As I mentioned, it is basically a holiday in Charlotte. It is training camp eve. The Hornets kick off camp tomorrow, September the 30th, and there is a lot of optimism, excitement, anticipation, whatever adjective you want to use. The vibes are very positive going into this training camp session for the Hornets. Maybe the most exciting I can remember in a very long time. Now, there are obviously some questions to be answered. It's going to be a lot about development. How have last year's guys come along? How's the Tajon Salon development going? Is Moussa Diabate going to be able to step in to his role at the center position? Grant Williams, Josh Green, those guys still trying to get healthy. Is Trey Mann all the way recovered? Is Brandon Miller feeling all the way better? Can LaMelo stay healthy? Obviously, we know the glaring things to keep an eye on going into this training camp session, but also the rookies are going to have a lot of focus on them. Con Knipple, the 4th overall pick, we know he's coming in with a lot of expectations, a lot of anticipation for what he can do this year on the court. Ryan Kalkbrenner may be asked to play a massive role. That's something we've talked about here on the show quite a bit as of late. Kalkbrenner may be thrown into the fire earlier than expected, and he may be asked to play a lot more important minutes. So his development throughout training camp is going to be something very important to watch as well. Now, LaMelo Ball's defense is also on my mind going into this training camp. We've heard the last couple weeks from Charles Lee's mouth himself, as a matter of fact, that LaMelo is taking all the right steps. He's doing all the right work on that end of the floor to step his game up a notch on the defensive side of the ball and become a better defender, which is something we all know he desperately needs to do. It's something we've talked about several times, and that the Hornets could absolutely benefit from that. But it's not just LaMelo, it's the rest of the team as well. Charles Lee's defensive mindset and defensive system really needs to kick in this training camp, also making the Hornets better on defense. They're allowing them to pick up their pace a little bit, get more possessions, and score more points as well. Also to keep an eye on is going to be the shooting. How we know on paper the Hornets' shooting percentage has definitely improved with the addition of Colin Sexton, the drafting of Con Knipple, Liam McNeely. Kalkbrenner can shoot. Sion James is not a bad shooter. Pat Connaughton, if he sticks around, that's another question that's going to linger throughout training camp, is also a deadly shooter. So the Hornets, in theory, have increased their shooting percentage, should alleviate the problems from last year, but are they going to actually be able to do that? That's a whole nother question. Now, also, as I mentioned, we've got a media day session coming up today. The Hornets will be asked some questions going into training camp, and I've got a couple that I think are pressing that need to be answered during or before training camp. Again, we'll know more for sure about what questions were answered in this media day tomorrow on the show. It's finally time to see the rebuilt roster that we have talked about all summer on the court. And that's a time when the pieces start to fall into place, roles begin to get carved out. That's also going to be important. This year's training camp, as I've mentioned several times all throughout the summer, draped in hope and optimism, maybe again the most that I've seen in a very long time. Before we get to that, though, again, there's those questions we were talking about. The first one of the pressing questions that I think needs to be answered at the media session today and then going forwards into training camp is, of course, the most talked about subject all summer. Who's going to start at center? Does Charles Lee already have that plan in place? Has he already got his mind made up? Is there somebody he's eyeing specifically to run out there on opening night? Now, we all think, of course, that's going to be Moussa Diabate. We've talked several times about that. You guys know that I'm very high on him. I think he is the right move. I think he's going to be the center, at least for this year, for the Hornets, and I do believe he can develop into a long-term answer at that position should that be the case. But we've also talked about the other two names. We know very well that there's three centers on the roster: Mason Plumlee, Ryan Kalkbrenner, Moussa Diabate, and they could not be three more different basketball players with their styles of play, with the games that they have. Will Charles Lee settle in at first and start the veteran Mason Plumlee? We know he's got a big frame. He's built like a traditional NBA center. We also are aware of what he's going to bring to the table. We know what he's capable of in the NBA, especially as a starting center. He's been one of those before. He has a stint in Charlotte, but he's also a veteran who has just shown over his career what he has to offer and what his game is. So there's not a lot of question marks when it comes to Mason Plumlee. It's just about, he's not flashy. He's not a star by any means, but he's competent at the center position. Is competence all Charles Lee's looking for out of his starting five? That is another question. Will it be Moussa Diabate? As I've mentioned, he seems to be the right fit for this team going forward. He seems to be the front runner to start at that center position, as that's been talked about all summer. But is that the direction Charles Lee wants to go? Does he want to try and run out an undersized guy out there and pray and hope and pray that his offensive development has taken this summer and he's moved forwards on that end of the floor? We know about his rebounding, his defensive ability. Those two things are not in question. It's more offensively for Moussa, and can he take that next step? But there's also a chance that Charles Lee throws everybody a curveball and runs Ryan Kalkbrenner out there to start at center on the opening night in Charlotte, and the reasoning for that would just be to get his rookie out there to see where he's at, what he can do, where his almost, I guess, baseline is, and what the Hornets need to improve on, how they're going to fare with Ryan Kalkbrenner if they do plan for him to be the center of the future here in Charlotte. Again, he could want to see what the rookie is capable of. Again, that's the question that I think needs to be answered today. The first question at Media Day that needs to be answered is, what is the plan? Does Charles Lee have a plan for who is going to start, or is it going to be kind of like I talked about last week on the show, a more rotational, situational type position based on what the game is dictating at the time? That's all things for Charles Lee to answer if he gets asked those. Now, obviously, we know if everyone is healthy and at 100%, we know for a fact three of the starters are going to be LaMelo Ball, Brandon Miller, and Miles Bridges. The other two position battles are wide open, it would appear, as they'll fight it out throughout camp to see who's going to start at that two. Now, I say wide open, but we are pretty narrowed down to who it's wide open between, as Khan and Colin Sexton will battle for that two-guard position. And then we'll have the three centers that I just mentioned fighting it out for that. So it'll be nice to see. That's going to be something to keep an eye on, but it'll also be nice to know if Charles Lee has a plan in place going into training camp, if he gets asked that at Media Day today. Now, the second question I think is very pressing going into this training camp is it has to do with the rookies. This might be the most anticipated rookie class since LaMelo was drafted, and that was just including LaMelo. But in terms of all of the draft picks that the Hornets have made, this is one of, if not the most exciting draft class that Charlotte has had in a long time. All four of these rookies come into camp with a lot of promise, but also a lot of questions, and that does include Con Knipple. There's questions surrounding him on a daily basis. We've talked a lot about those. Speaking of Con, we know he's going to play a major role, just not sure if it's going to be off the bench or in the starting lineup yet. I do eventually see him working his way into the starting lineup, but I also think that Charles Lee will probably run Colin Sexton out there on opening night just because he is a little more experienced. It's not his first opening night. The jitters in front of the NBA crowd for the first time will be taken away, so I would imagine Con comes off the bench opening night, but again, I could be wrong about that. I just talked about the possibility of Ryan Kalkbrenner doing the same thing in terms of playing a major role here with this team. That's something to watch too. Sion James, likely to have the smallest role as a rookie, but the one who raises the most questions, the one who this actual question is focused around, is Liam McNeely. How soon will we see him on the court, and in what capacity? How large of a role? How many minutes will he play? What is the plan for Liam McNeely? He looked like he was shot out of a cannon, if you remember, out in Las Vegas in his 2 Summer League performances, scoring 22 points, grabbing 12 rebounds in his first game. Did not do as well in the second, cut his scoring average down to 18 points a game in that second game, or overall in Las Vegas. And again, he was only able to play 2 games due to some Achilles tightness that the Hornets were monitoring very closely, and he seems to have been given the full go for training camp. Nothing to worry about there with McNeely. It was said on draft night that he was a steal at number 29 when the Hornets moved up to draft him, but what will his regular season role look like? Specifically this season, I know he is a big part of the plan going forwards, and as he continues to develop, he'll force himself into more minutes, but just as a rookie, what's his role going to be? The interesting part about that question is, of course, we know Liam McNeely is best at the 3 position when he gets to play that more small forward stretch type of guy, which just so happens to be where Brandon Miller is at his best as well. Con Knipple arguably could play that position. Miles Bridges also going to get some minutes there. Grant Williams, Josh Green, all going to play at that small forward position when they return to full health. And so it's going to be a bit crowded for McNeely to see minutes there. He could play the 2 guard, but he is best suited for the 3. As I've said several times on this show, I don't think it'll be very long into the season before Liam has, with the word I just used, forced his way into the rotation in some capacity. He's just too good of an athlete. He's a dynamic scorer. He's a high-energy guy, and he's a hyper-competitor. He's everything that Charles Lee and Jeff Peterson have talked about wanting in terms of this culture rebuild going forward. Liam fits the bill on all of those. Now, on the court, he's got a great ability to stretch the floor because he is a good shooter and is only going to get better at that as time goes on, and that's going to be great for LaMelo because he can make Liam better with his passing and with his spacing and being able to find the open shooter as McNeely can knock those down. He can also drive to the basket if the guy steps out a little bit too far. We know he's a good ball handler. McNeely, too, has a very high basketball IQ. He's a great passer. The tools are there in the tool belt. It's just going to be about him making his way onto the court and proving that in real game situations. It's never a bad thing to be deep at different positions in this league, and for the most part, that's where the Hornets sit right now, which is a good thing. I know it's kind of a problem for Charles Lee to have to navigate a deeper rotation and plug-and-play guys, but it is a good problem to have nonetheless. Now, Media Day today might give some clarity as to Charles Lee's plans to use that depth, but he could also be very buttoned up and just give coach speak type answers. We'll have to wait and see until after the Media Day session. We'll talk a little bit more about it tomorrow, of course, on the program, but it's still going to be very interesting to take a look at and see what exactly Charles Lee's thoughts are going into this 25-26 training camp. Someone else who's going to be at training camp and should have a big role going forward is the Hornets' backup point guard, Trey Mann. It's another exciting thing to keep an eye on during camp, all throughout the preseason. Trey Mann's health. Is he back to 100%? Is he going to be able to take the same form that he had last year before he got hurt? Now, we know he was playing like a potential 6th man of the year. He was averaging double figures in scoring coming off the bench before he did suffer that back injury. Now, not the largest sample size, of course, but in the games he did play, he was looking like a man on a mission, like he had figured this 6-man thing out, and that is very positive news for the Hornets going forwards. While it's pretty clear that he won't be fighting for starting minutes by any means, at least at the 1, assuming that LaMelo stays healthy, of course, that position is all locked up by him. He's going to be the starter as he should be, and he's going to continue to develop and get better himself. But having a guy like Trey Mann coming off the bench in charge of running the second unit should help Charles Lee get some good sleep at night. It should be a good feeling, a comforting feeling to know that you have one of the better backup point guards in the league sitting on your bench, ready and willing to go at any time. Also, should be very comfortable barring a drastic health problem with LaMelo. We know how possible that is. Unfortunately, we have to bring that up every show just about, but it is a realistic possibility. It's something that the Hornets organization and fan base has dealt with for quite some time now, but having a guy like Trey Mann who would come in and not really miss a beat, obviously he's not as dynamic or as good of a scorer as LaMelo is, but Trey can hold his own, and if he can come in and run the offense with the ones, the Hornets should be just fine in that regard as well. As I said, we know that Trey Mann can score, but his ability to run the offense as a whole might be the most underrated part of his game. He's a fantastic passer, much like the rest of the guards on this Hornets roster, and he doesn't turn the ball over too egregiously or too often, so that could help him as well carve out a bigger role, and Charles Lee's already seen it himself. That helps too, so there's confidence built in Trey Mann as the backup point guard or potentially the starter if something bad does happen. Again, LaMelo's job is not in danger by any means, in my opinion, if he is healthy, but we know how that is, so having a proven backup just like Trey Mann who can come in without missing a beat could help and continue the Hornets down their path to the playoffs or to the play-in, to the postseason playing basketball after the regular season. That's going to be something very intriguing to keep an eye on as well. Now, I told you we're going to talk another thing about this, give another segment towards David Thorpe's comments about LaMelo Ball that he made last week. We talked about him on Friday on the show. David Thorpe thinks LaMelo Ball is not a winning player. He thinks that the Hornets don't go out and try to win. He said he doesn't focus his time on teams that aren't committed. He doesn't commit to teams that aren't committed to winning, and he feels that way about the Hornets. So he did fully disclose, he made it clear that he doesn't watch a lot of Hornets games. He hasn't watched a lot of LaMelo games. And his comment or the headline of the article that says that talked about his lack of desire for winning or competition as a whole. When David Thorpe was talking about that, he wasn't referring to NBA LaMelo. This article came out while LaMelo was still playing in Australia, and his thoughts haven't really updated or haven't really changed since he got to the NBA, which I think is one of the more ridiculous parts about Thorpe's comments in the first place. I've been sitting on these thoughts all weekend, and they only, every time I play them over and over in my mind, they get more and more ridiculous. As I mentioned, he formulated that opinion a long time ago, and it just hasn't changed, and it doesn't seem like he's watched enough LaMelo to even change that if he wanted to. Sure, the way LaMelo plays is not a traditional style of basketball. It's not always the most appealing thing to watch, and of course we know he's never seen a shot he wasn't open to take. I don't mean any of those things bad or as slights towards LaMelo, but that is who he is. That's the way he plays. That's his style of basketball. But saying that he doesn't play to win is crazy to me. LaMelo is, I think, part of the reason the trade rumors that are fly around with him so often are just that, trade rumors, is because Charles Lee and Jeff Peterson see that hyper competitiveness that they are looking for in this new culture. Somewhere deep in LaMelo, he is a competitor. He's a tough guy. He wants to win. Now, he's gotten very unlucky with some of his injuries and things like that going in the past, but I've never really had a critique on his competitive nature. I've always been convinced that LaMelo goes out there trying to win and trying to do what he thinks is best for his team to win. Now, he's not necessarily always had the most help, and if he goes out there with that same mindset this year, I think it may hinder the team a little bit. As we know, he does not necessarily have to play hero ball every possession. There's going to be other guys on the floor with him this year that are spreading it out, stretching things a little bit more, getting themselves open for shots that they can knock down, and allowing for him some driving space in some isolation type situations, as everyone will have to step out unless Mason Plumlee's on the floor. He's not as much of a threat when it comes to stretching the floor, but Musa and Kalkbrenner can both shoot a little bit. Kalkbrenner has been told to let it fly if he's got an open look, so we know that he'll be out there causing the floor to space a little bit, which could bode well for LaMelo, again, in those isolation situations, driving to the basket. Like I said, LaMelo is a true competitor, and it may not necessarily present in the most hard-nosed, gritty, got that dog in him type of way, for lack of a better phrase, but that doesn't mean it's not there. That doesn't mean he's not going out trying to win every game And I think that with better players, with a more exciting roster, his competitiveness is only going to increase. His desire to win is only going to go up from here, and it will make him and everyone else around him a better player in the process. Again, I'm saying all this because the ridiculousness of David Thorpe's comments has just been eating at me all weekend. I just completely disagree with the slight against LaMelo's desire to win. Now, say what you want about the one-legged three-point shots. Those aren't for everybody. Say what you want about his offensive inefficiency last year. That number can't be denied. But his effort and his ability, or his effort and his competitiveness, those two things are not something I think needs to come into question. I think he may go about it the wrong way sometimes, but that's going to change now that he's got more guys to help him put the ball in the basket. He does play a lot of hero ball. He does shoot at a very high percentage. His usage rate is up at the top of the league. So again, I understand some of those critiques, but saying that he doesn't do all those things in an effort to win is not that, it just doesn't make sense to me. If he was out stat chasing or trying to keep his percentages in the right spot, then he wouldn't shoot one-legged three-point shots. He wouldn't throw it up over two guys because he thinks he can make those shots. He's trying to do that because that's what he thinks is best for the team to win. That mindset is what needs to change a little bit. I think that's going to change as camp and the preseason unfold, and we'll see a little bit more of LaMelo kind of meshing with his guys, trusting the other guys on the floor around him. It's not just him and Brandon Miller anymore. Miles Bridges coming off 20 points a game as well. It's not just those three. It's going to be there's going to be five guys on the floor that can be useful, that can be beneficial, that can help on both ends of the floor, whether it be offense or defense. That too is something that LaMelo has started working hard on. I just said it earlier. We've heard it out of Charles Lee's mouth that he's taking the proper steps on the defensive end of the floor to improve his game and get better. He's also worked very hard on his body this offseason. He's gained some muscle. He's put the necessary work in to try and make himself a little less fragile, I guess is the word that I'm looking for just for lack of a better term. He's done what it's necessary to keep his body in the right shape, in the best condition throughout the summer. He honestly looks better than I think he ever has at the during a photo shoot where he in uniform came out the other day. I think LaMelo is on the right path. I think all of those things just speak to his leadership in that's improving as well, meaning all of these things go back to the desire to win. That is something that I think runs rampant within LaMelo Ball, and he is going to prove that on the court this year. Again, David Thorpe's comments, kind of asinine, don't really make a lot of sense. I'm not going to say come out of left field because everybody's been kind of taking shots at LaMelo all offseason. But he has a great opportunity coming into this training camp tomorrow, coming into the preseason on Sunday, going into the regular season. If he can stay healthy, if he can up that scoring efficiency, if he can utilize that elite passing ability that he has to get the ball to the rest of his teammates, then I think the lack of competitiveness or lack of desire to win, I think all of those tropes, all of those comments will be gone. They will go quickly out the window as soon as LaMelo can prove them wrong and win. And if the Hornets start winning, it's only going to get better. So I think that, again, just to wrap things up, I think David Thorpe had some ridiculous comments over the past week about LaMelo Ball. He is absolutely committed to winning. There's no question about that in my mind. Again, he does it in his own unique way, but it's always because he thinks that's what the team needs to win. That's what's got to change, is his mindset towards what is best for the team when it comes to winning, not him getting more competitive, not him finding a fire or a desire to win basketball games. Those things are all there. It's just going to be a matter of him altering his mindset for what is best to get the team to victory. That, too, is going to be, just add that to the list of exciting things to watch going forwards in training camp, which takes place tomorrow. I'm very excited about that. That's going to do it for the show today. Again, tomorrow we're going to figure out what Charles Lee talked about at his Media Day performance today. Leave me a comment, smash that subscribe button, leave a like as well. And as always, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you back here tomorrow with a brand new episode of Hornets Daily.